various parts of Chapter 4, things you need to know about cells. It's important to note that I am not going to go over each of the organelles and any of the PowerPoints, and I didn't do that in class either. So if you're not familiar with the organelles, please take some time to watch one of the videos on the playlist. So the cell theory has three parts, and it's pretty basic and mostly common sense. The first component is that all living things are made of one or more cells. So in essence, if it isn't composed of cells, we don't consider it to be a living thing. The second part of the cell theory is that the cells are the basic unit of structure and function in an organism. This may sound a lot like the first one, but it just illustrates that everything that happens in an organism, a larger organism, a multicellular organism, happens at a cellular level. It's our muscle cells that are involved in muscle movement. It's our brain cells that are involved in sending electrical impulses. The third part of the cell theory is that cells only come from the reproduction of other living cells. Basically, we're talking about binary fission or mitosis. And here's the thing. We know all of the components. We know what makes up the cell membrane. We know what the mitochondria is made of. But as of now, we have not been able to put all of those things together, shake them up in a beaker, and create a cell that actually survives and lives and thrives. So living cells can only come from the reproduction of other living cells. So why are cells so small? And it really has to do with the ratio of surface area to their volume. Because cells don't have eyeballs, hands, and things like that to get the molecules they need, those things have to diffuse into the cell. And if you remember from our discussion on osmosis and diffusion, that is based on the random movement of those molecules. So if you have a huge room and you're trying to bounce ping pong balls around until they land in a cup in the center of the room, it may take you a long time. However, if you have a very small box and you're bouncing ping balls around in it, trying to get them to land in the cup in the middle, you have a greater probability of achieving that goal. So cells are small. So if you had the ping pong ball in a very large room, it would take a great deal of energy on your part in order to put the ping pong balls in the cup. And here's an illustration about surface area. You have the same general size. If you were to have one cell, the surface area is 5,400 micrometers squared. And if you divide this into 27 smaller cubes, the surface area becomes 16,200 micrometers squared. This is going to be key throughout our discussion. Prokaryotes and eukaryotes, as far as cells and organisms go, every living organism is one or the other. So let's look at the difference between them. First of all, prokaryotes have no membrane-bound organelles. You know from studying the organelles that the things like the Golgi apparatus and the mitochondria all have membranes around them. So these organelles do not exist in prokaryotes. If prokaryotes don't have a mitochondria, by the way, how does that affect their energy production, their ATP production? Something to think about. In a prokaryote, their DNA is in a ring or a coil, and it's floating in the cytoplasm, and it's generally attached to the inner membrane. In eukaryotic organisms, the DNA is organized into chromosomes, and those are found in the nucleus. In prokaryotes, they're generally single-celled organisms. The two class of organisms that are prokaryotes are bacteria and archaea bacteria, which means everything else is a eukaryote. And they can be single-celled organisms. We studied the paramecium and the amoeba some in class, especially during the osmosis and diffusion chapters. So don't make the assumption that just because it's a single-celled organism that it must be a eukaryote. It could, in fact, if it is a bacteria, it is a prokaryote. So here's some of the basic differences. Now, I want you to notice the scale at the bottom. This is 0.1 to 10 micrometers in size. This one is 10 to 100 micrometers. So the smallest cell, eukaryotic cell, is the same size as the largest bacteria. So bacteria are much smaller. Some of the organelles that bacteria do have are ribosomes, and this is important because you know that ribosomes build proteins, and bacteria need proteins just like eukaryotic cells. The last thing I have here, and it's not showing up very well, but the last one is that prokaryotic cells reproduce by binary fission, and eukaryotic cells reproduce through mitosis. That's it.